All right, guys, we're going to be getting started shortly here. We'll just let a few people roll in. We're probably going to have a handful of people tonight based on the registration. Although a lot of people were from the UK and stuff like that, so they'll probably be looking for a replay. And then how we're going to do this tonight, guys, is as we go through the call, basically, I'll just ask everyone to stay muted. I'm going to go through kind of like a PowerPoint presentation explanation. And then after we go through that, then at the end, we'll have a chance for like questions and comments. And along the way, if you guys have questions or if you have commentary that you want me to address, feel free to leave it in the chat. And I usually wait until about 8:02 to start. So I'll give people another 2 minutes to hop on. All right. All right, let's see. Perfect. I see Jay Boy. There we go. We got the chat starting. How you doing, Jay? Good. Thank you. Thank you. All right, guys, we're going to get rolling. So let me share my screen with everyone here. Let me pull this up and let's get this started. All right. So you guys should all be able to see my screen. Yep, it says you can. So that's good. Now, guys, for tonight's presentation, I dropped a YouTube video somewhat recently on this topic of weed and mental health. This is going to have elements of that YouTube video in it, but it also has some different stuff kind of blended in. So if you saw the YouTube video, this is not just a repeat of that YouTube video. Okay, there's more to this. So, all right, let's get going with things. And if you just hopped on, feel free to mute your mic once you come on. That way, guys, we won't have any like background noise or anything like that. Okay, here we go. So weed and mental health, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Let's take a look. So as a disclaimer, this really isn't all just about weed. I stated here, mental health is under attack. When we look at it, if we look at social media, if we look at the news, mainstream media, adult media content, and the availability to it today, whether it's on a platform like TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, we're constantly surrounded by hypersexualized content, video games, the food that we eat. Obviously, we just went through a massive pandemic. And then, of course, if we circle back around to the news, there's this war that's always going on in the news. I tell people, or in some people's country, like literally going on for some people, unfortunately, we are constantly being compared to others, or we're constantly being told how to feel. So as a disclaimer, tonight's topic is not just solely focused on weed. I think there's a lot more to the bigger picture when it comes to mental health than just weed. So that's the first thing. A second disclaimer too, guys. I'm talking about THC containing products, not necessarily just CBD or other endocannabinoids, which we can talk about at the end if we want. All right. My big thing when it comes to any health condition, when I'm talking to someone, when we're working with people, my question always goes back to what is the root cause? So if someone's depressed, if someone's anxious, I always like to start off with the idea that that anxiety or that depression is a symptom of something else, not a diagnosis in and of itself. So you go to see a doctor in some cases and they're like, oh yeah, you have anxiety. Oh, you have depression. Oh, you have psychosis, right? Well, why? Like, why did that happen? Is it nutritional issues? Is there a vitamin D deficiency that comes down to depression or a thyroid disorder? Is it lifestyle issues? Is it, binging media content at night, playing video games, not getting in enough exercise, not getting in healthy sources of dopamine? Is it family issues? Is it financial or job related issues? Is it your health? Is your health in a bad place? Do you suffer from a disease, or is it addiction related, which we're going to be talking about a lot tonight? Is there a genetic predisposition? And again, answering that question of if you are struggling with your mental health, you have to ask yourself why, especially if you're at a state where you're indulging in weed products or cannabis products. But yeah, start to ask yourself, and this could go for any health condition, guys. If someone tells you you have a problem, ask why. Well, okay, great. Why do I have that problem? I'm always looking for answers, especially when it comes to my health and anything medically related. I think it helps when we're talking about weed to just kind of be honest right off the bat. If I were to look back at my early weed use, I can say recreationally, when I was in early college, it was fun. Like there was a point in my life recreationally where I had fun smoking weed. The first few times I smoked, maybe the second or third time, I don't think I've ever laughed that hard in my life as I did that night in my apartment with some of my roommates. To an extent, and we're going to talk about this one more, it does provide you with a little bit of an escape from reality, especially if we go back to maybe when we first started smoking. Stress relief. Perhaps there is an element of stress relief. People work a really hard day. You have a stressful day at school. You have some family fight or fight with your coworkers. There is something stress relieving about the idea of coming home and smoking weed, having a drink of alcohol, or consuming tobacco, or lounging and binging media content. There's a stress relief factor to that. Anxiety relief. Some people would say that cannabis helps with anxiety. Depression relief, PTSD and trauma relief from that. I think everyone here could either pick one or all of these categories and acknowledge at some point in their life, they must have felt some degree of benefit or some degree of perceived benefit. Because if the first time you smoked, you didn't experience any one of these things, chances are you would not have kept smoking. Like if it was just garbage right off the bat for you, you would have stopped. And that happens for some people. They smoke once or twice and they say, oh, that's not for me. So let's be honest about it. Now, the question we have to ask ourselves is, can things change? That's what we have to ask. And I tell people, think of kind of like a relationship that you've been in the past, because a relationship with cannabis or any drug can be similar. And think about that relationship that maybe started off really good, right? So in my case, I meet this new girlfriend. Things are going great. We're hanging out. We're going to get meals together. And initially, it's recreationally fun. It's stress relieving having that companion in my life, right? Maybe it's helping ease some of the symptoms of depression a little bit now that I got someone to spend the winters with. And that relationship starts off really, really strong. But then something changes over time and the relationship goes south. I start to learn more about that person, or perhaps that person starts to learn more about me, and things just start to go south. And I think this is a really good comparison when it comes to weed. We have to acknowledge that relationships change. They change all the time, right? People separate, people get back together, people get divorced, people get remarried. Relationships change. And I don't know why we need to treat our relationship with a drug any differently. I was so dead set on the idea that weed was only a positive. Like when I was deep into smoking weed, I couldn't accept or tolerate anyone even saying something otherwise. And that's such an ignorant point of view that I had on my end, or such a faded point of view, a blurry point of view, because everything else in life changes. So why would I think that my relationship with weed was going to remain exactly as it was day one until the day I died, when literally everything else in my life was going to change, everything. So I think this is a good way to start to look at cannabis, or start to question it if you're in a place where you're questioning weed and your mental health. A big thing that happens as people go on, and I think this is where we start to see a shift in the role that weed plays with mental health, is different life circumstances. So, right, not in high school anymore, not in college anymore. I have a new set of responsibilities, a new set of expenses, perhaps new relationships, new goals that I'm going after in life, new job opportunities, and new experiences that I want to pursue or that I've pursued. if I were to look at my life and where I was in a state of mental health when I first started smoking, and this goes for a lot of people, they usually tend to be younger. Now, I will acknowledge I came from a decent background. Okay. My family had their problems, and we'll talk about problems in a little bit. But overall, like, my family was financially secure. I had an opportunity to go to school. I grew up in a nice neighborhood. Like, I got lucky in that regard with my family. Um, with that being said, I didn't have a ton of stress when I was in college or high school. College had started to ramp up, but in high school, I didn't have a lot of stress. So when I was younger, smoking, working a part-time job, going out partying with my friends on the weekends, and the money I was working for was really just to kind of fund having a good time, that was very, very different from my life at 25, 28, going on 30 years old. Circumstances changed. It went from just a fling with an individual to now wanting to pursue a meaningful relationship. It went from an experience being a Saturday night at a bar to now maybe I wanted to travel. Maybe I want to do something different. So I think it's important to acknowledge, again, life changes. And as life changes, our relationship with weed, especially from a standpoint of mental health, also does. Something that I like to point out when it comes to addiction, and I don't think you guys would be here if you weren't struggling with addiction on some point or continuing to work through addiction. Addiction lacks progress. And one of my favorite quotes from a speaker that I quite often enjoy listening to, Tony Robbins, progress equals happiness. And I think this is absolutely true. If life is inherently changing all around us all the time, and we are remaining stagnant, we're not making progress, we're not making changes. And look, you might be making progress in relationships and business and all those other things, but you might be remaining stagnant in addiction, in that one behavior. That I think does not lead to happiness. Right? Things are meant to change. Life is meant to advance, and addiction lacks progress. Addiction just keeps us running around that hamster wheel. And I'll say something even more to that. If you're the type of person that enjoys achieving in life, whether it's from a business standpoint, a relationship standpoint, whatever it may be, if you're making progress in all categories of your life, but you're not making progress in quitting something that you no longer want to be doing, that's going to be detrimental to your mental health. Because if you're proving, I think that's worse actually for that person than the person who's not making any progress anywhere at all, because then they're stuck to deal with, damn, why am I doing so well in so many categories? Why can't I tackle this one thing? And that's extra bad for a person's mental health who's used to making progress. Don't focus on the pain, focus on the progress. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a little bit later on. When it comes to mental health, I think we obviously tend to focus on the pain, the anxiety, the depression, the PTSD, and sometimes those things actually get worse when we quit an addiction at first. At first, they sometimes get worse, and that's painful, but you don't want to be focused on that in that moment. You want to look to the long-term outcomes of quitting. So, okay. Addiction and mental health. So now I'm crossing over a little bit. Now I'm talking in terms of weed addiction, cannabis addiction. Addiction only takes, it never gives. Okay. And I'm using the Voldemort thing. I use him in a lot of my PowerPoints from Harry Potter. This is what I imagine the addictive voice or the addiction to look like, some type of monster in my brain. Addiction only takes, it never gives. I've said this many times before. It's like investing your money into something that's never going to give you a return on your investment. If you have money invested in stocks and you've watched your stocks tank through times of recession or this or that, or when the economy is not doing good, that is a super depressing feeling. It's not good. I don't watch that and say, wow, I feel good about being down X amount of money today. Maybe to some extent if there's a buying opportunity, but that's a different topic. Overall, you feel bad. Addiction is no different. So why does addiction only take? It takes away our money. Our money might be down. It can break our relationships. It can waste our physical health. So if I'm stuck in active weed addiction and I'm waking up every day, and trust me, I was asking myself this question often, why don't I feel better? And here I am smoking weed, buying more weed. Why aren't I why aren't I doing better? Why am I so anxious? Looking back, I've realized and asked myself, why did I expect to feel good? Like if I were to create a list of things that I would picture that would make a person feel good, I was doing little to none of those things on a consistent basis. So why was I waking up every day in weed addiction saying, why don't I feel good today? Why don't I feel better? Why am I still depressed? Um, I think it's very important to remember when we're stuck in a state of addiction, addiction does not want you to be happy. When it comes to addiction, addiction wants to see you depressed. It wants to see you anxious because then that voice in your head, that Voldemort voice or whatever you imagine that monster to be, has the ability to say, it's okay, I'll comfort you. Come back here. Oh, you're anxious, you're depressed, you're feeling out of your sort. Oh, come on, I got a solution for you. Addiction wants us to feel this way because it knows it can keep us trapped in that cycle. So when I look at addiction and mental health, I could even go a step further. And when I struggled with addiction, and I know a lot of people I talk to, it's the same thing. We start to doubt ourselves and we start to lose faith or trust in ourselves. If I tell myself I'm going to quit smoking weed 100 times a year and I fail 100 times a year, eventually I'm going to start to doubt and lose faith in myself. Well, that's not good for my mental health. If I can't even trust myself anymore, how am I going to build myself up when I'm feeling down, when I'm feeling sad? Cravings are definitely not good for mental health. Cravings, in my opinion, quite literally take us out of life's experiences. Here I am at a family dinner. Here I am with someone that I love, that I want to spend time with. Here I am with a group of friends that I legitimately enjoy being around, or engaging in a job that I legitimately enjoy engaging in, that I worked hard to create for myself. And all I want to do is get out of that situation to go and smoke weed. So weed literally pulls us out of our life experiences through the power of cravings. And I'm not talking like necessarily physically leaving the dinner or physically leaving work to go smoke weed. I'm talking about it in mentally, I've checked out. I'm not there anymore. Forget this dinner. When is this thing going to end? I want to go smoke. So that's obviously not good from a mental health standpoint, in my opinion. And then, of course, daily withdrawal. Withdrawal, if you haven't gone through it already, if you haven't started quitting, and if you haven't experienced it before, it's a feeling of being sick. Withdrawal feels like the flu because our body is detoxing. And when we're sick, if you've ever had the flu or had a major health problem that you've had to battle, it tends to be a little anxiety provoking and depressing. When you don't feel good, it's depressing. When we struggle with addiction, we're constantly going in and out of a state of withdrawal, right? So I take a hit, I go relax for a few hours. And if you're used to smoking all day or every night, your brain is saying, okay, that high is wearing off, that drug is wearing off, that endocannabinoid is wearing off, that nicotine is wearing off. When am I going to get my next hit? And your body enters a state of withdrawal and detox, and that physically makes you feel sick. You compound that with cravings and a bunch of doubt and a bunch of lack of faith in oneself, lack of trust. I think that's a recipe for disaster when it comes to one's mental health. And not to mention, and I won't go into detail on these things because I have talked about this a lot, your endocannabinoid system and dopamine production. One thing that I haven't talked about, and you guys are going to get a sneak peek at that, weed, and I just metaphorically find this fascinating. It takes away our dreams. Most people who smoke weed a lot, they no longer dream. Now, that in and of itself is a bad thing because when you dream, that's when your brain is organizing all the events of the day or the week or the year that have occurred. That's where your brain is making sense of the good things and the bad things. And if we're not allowing our brain to do that, it's never going to get a state of order. So you're going to wake up the next day, always feeling behind, always feeling flustered, always feeling overwhelmed because your brain never got the opportunity to process what happened from the day, the week, or several years prior. And when we take away our dreams, I think that's a scary thing on a metaphoric level. And I'm going to talk about dopamine with this, because dreams, and I'm not talking necessarily like dreams when we sleep, but like having a dream, having a vision, having a motivation towards something in life is what pushes us. That's what drives us towards progress. That's what makes us feel good. And weed literally takes away our dreams. It takes away our dreaming. And if we get into a state of addiction and we enter that state of dopamine deficit, which is created when we have a long-term addiction, our brain actually underproduces dopamine, which dopamine is responsible for our motivation, our drive, our determination, our pursuit of that next goal, our pursuit of that next dream. Gosh, I think that's a sad day when you stop dreaming, when you stop wanting something. I think that's a very, very, very sad thing. Now, just on another physiological level, our endocannabinoid system is out of whack. Your body makes its own endocannabinoids. This system plays a huge role in regulating feelings of anxiety, depression, happiness, sadness, all those things. And when we smoke a lot of cannabis, our body stops making its own endocannabinoids. It relies on the phytocannabinoids from the cannabis plant. So when you overload the system, when it gets overwhelmed, things go south. And that's what we're going to talk about a little bit more specifically in the next few slides. So another problem that we run into. So it takes away our dreams, dopamine deficits are created, and it screws with our endocannabinoid system, which is like the master regulator for our emotions. So the question becomes, how did we get here? Like, how was it that just not that long ago, I was saying, yeah, weed is good for my mental health. Weed is good for mental health in general for people. Well, I think a lot of it has to do with media. I think a lot of it has to do with influencers. If you're in the social media world like I am, there's a heavy influence for cannabis. And typically what we see is it's a person who attractive. They look like they're out physically having fun, right? It's that like happy go lucky kind of 420 vibe look, like California chick, California surfer, healthy organic lifestyle. This is what we see. We aren't shown the person who's struggling with cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome, who's spent, $3,000 a month on heavy concentrates, dabs, and medical products, who's been hospitalized 9 times. We're not shown that. That's not talked about on social media. Marketing is genius. I don't know, just a side note, something cool that you guys, a little thing to take away. So I used to have a vaporizer unit called the PAX vaporizer, and it was a dry herb vaporizer. I had 2 of them at one point. The people who developed that actually developed Juul. The 2 guys that made PAX went on to make the Juul e-cigarette. They were marketing geniuses when it came to fun, cool, accessible, ease of access. So marketing. Now, before I talk about pharma, I'll just say a lack of research. And this we can blame the government on. Because cannabis has been a scheduled drug, there has not been a lot of research. So if people said they felt good from smoking weed, well, we'll take that at face value because we can't do research on it. So there's been a major lack of research up until recently. And then lastly, this is a side note, and I don't make videos about this on my YouTube because this is just my opinion. This is not based on anything factual. I think Big Pharma eventually wants a cut, right? Because if weed is going to get into the field of mental health and treating anxiety, depression, chronic pain, pharma wants a cut of that. They need a cut of that. That's just the way it goes. It's business. And I think the more that weed can be pushed and promoted as a good alternative to other drugs, which, look, in many cases it might be, that opens up the doors for pharmaceutical companies to really swing in. And I think it's only going to be a matter of time before, like, you're on TV and you see a commercial for like Zoloft or any of those drugs, that you're going to see a commercial for some specific strain of cannabis. I think it's only a matter of time before we see that. So, okay, now, all right, that's how we got here. And guys, just make sure you're, there we go. I think I got you, Allison. Let me try this real quick. Mute. There we go. Okay. So let's see. Where did I go? Is weed good for anyone? Well, what about chronic pain? What about PTSD? What about anxiety, depression? My answer is maybe. Okay. Maybe. Maybe. And this is what I have to say. How are you doing? Like, is weed helping you? Are you happy when you smoke? Are you like, this is a really important question I'm asking people, because this played a big role in my quitting. So when I would quit and I would go through withdrawals and I would feel depressed and anxious and irritable and all those things, I would be like, oh my God, this is terrible. I can't feel this way. And then I'd relapse and I'd go back to smoking. It took me a while to realize that I felt that way while I was smoking. Like, it wasn't until I journaled, and I wasn't huge into journaling, but just like made notes like, wow, I'm exhausted today. I have to go home and take a nap mid-afternoon. I feel like crap. Am I sick? I was journaling the same horrible symptoms while I was addicted as I was when I was quitting. So then when I would quit and I'd hit those withdrawals, I'd go back to my journal and be like, oh, Frank, you felt like crap anyways while you were smoking. Like, you weren't any happier. You weren't any less anxious. You kept telling yourself you were, but now, like, visually seeing it, you weren't. So that was big for me. What other things does smoking result in? That would be the next major question that we have to ask ourselves. So, are these things good or bad? What other behaviors has smoking resulted in? For me, it was always going more into chewing tobacco. I was typically out drinking with friends on weekends if I was smoking, getting into some trouble, adult media content, binging social media content, binging the news. I would literally binge the news at night while I was stoned. All those things. I never got into video games, but I imagine that's certainly a thing for some people in excess. So you have to ask yourself, are the things that you're doing while you're high good, or are they also potentially bad for mental health? Lastly, the only person that matters to answer this question, how are you doing? Is weed helping? Is you. I can't compare my story to someone else, because I might see a story, and this is to someone who is that they have cancer and they're using medicinal marijuana, and it's really worked for the better for them. Mentally, they feel better. Physically, they feel better. I can't see that and then say, Frank, look at this. Weed is helping this person who's struggling from cancer. There's no reason it can't help you. That's how my brain works, and I have to be on guard for that. The only person that matters is you. And I could say, for the flip side, guys, if I'm here obviously talking about the detriments of weed and you truly feel it's a benefit, well, maybe this doesn't apply. Okay. Now, going into a little bit more of that YouTube video with you guys, and I won't spend too much time on this because I did make a full video on it, but we are starting to get some research now because of Canada and then states within the US where we have legalization, Colorado, Las Vegas, that. Okay. So you guys can check out this review article for your own. You can pull it up on Google. When cannabis use goes wrong, mental health side effects of cannabis use that present to emergency services. So what this article did was researchers took all the current literature out there on PubMed and Medline, peer-reviewed research databases. And what they said was they typed in a search, cannabis and mental health. Cannabis, mental health, and emergency room visits, weed, mental health, and emergency department treatments. And they took all the published literature on people presenting to the emergency room for cannabis-induced issues. And they ruled out the use of synthetic cannabinoids. They excluded that literature from their findings, which is fairly important because we know synthetic cannabinoids like K2 and spice is just a complete disaster. Okay, what did they find? This is crazy. A strong association with the development of psychotic mood disorders, anxiety disorders, and suicidal ideation. I don't go into suicidal stuff. That's not my category. I've been extremely depressed, not to that extent. And I am going to have Macaulay, Sexton Sobriety, come back on our channel and do a live with everyone inside our Addiction Mindset community group if people are struggling with this, because he goes into detail about this stuff. CHS, they found lung injuries, especially from vaped cannabis products. And guys, I understand the whole it's from a medical dispensary. The jury is still out on vaping oil, though. Like, I understand if there's no pesticides and this and that, but like, pulmonologists do not agree that vaping oil is a good idea. Like, there's a lot of questions around that still. And then arrhythmias, cardiac disorders. So these were common things. These were some of the main things that were bringing people into the hospital in these searches. Now, okay, 25 to 35% of cannabis related ER visits in the study, a major study that they looked at, people came in with this. It wasn't CHS. It wasn't that stuff. It was anxiety, suicidal thoughts, psychotic symptoms such as psychosis, depression, and schizophrenia. So a large amount of people were coming into the hospital strictly because of the mental health consequences of cannabis use, a bad reaction to it. Now, before I say this, I don't want people to freak out, because I know we have people here who have been hospitalized for psychosis on more than one occasion. I developed psychosis when I was quitting. I don't feel in any way, shape, or form I'm going to wind up with schizophrenia. So take this with a grain of salt. But this is scary. Up to 50% of patients with cannabis-related psychotic symptoms going into the emergency room and then coming back for a subsequent hospitalization, they stated in this study, will go on to develop schizophrenia based on the current literature out there. That's really scary. If I look at things in life that I can control, the only thing that I really have hopefully good control over is my brain and my mind. And anything going forward in my life, I've determined that puts my brain at risk, my ability to process emotions, my ability to rationally react to a situation, is something that I don't ever want to mess with again after going through what I've gone through with addiction. And I think a lot of people land on this. I don't ever want to jeopardize what's going on up here, because it's sad. If you guys know people with Parkinson's, schizophrenia, Alzheimer's disease, some of these things, they lose their mind is gone. So I never want to touch anything that's going to put me at risk for that again. So just interesting that they say that. Schizophrenia, we don't need to go into it. It alters how people think, feel, and behave. They usually get hallucinations, delusions, and disassociation. If you guys go back to my early YouTube videos, you'll see I have glasses on in them. I don't wear contacts. I don't have glasses anymore. I was getting visual disturbances that my eye physician mistaked for like something else in my eyes. I had psychosis. I had symptoms of hallucinations. And even they said, they were like, your vision's really good, but I guess we get what you're saying. We'll give you glasses. Maybe that will help. It was kind of like a shot in the dark, because I had like a small deficit in my vision. And this is what it was. When those symptoms cleared up, my glasses haven't not yet returned. So fascinating. Delusions too. I thought I was going to be the Pablo Escobar minus all the violence and terrorism and all the bad things of the business world. I was like, I'm going to get this conglomerate of chiropractors and we're going to take over these large healthcare systems in New York. And I was truly out of my mind. I was delusional at points. Fascinating. So, there I was, just broke, stoned every night watching porn. So yeah, who's at the most risk? Adolescents, especially those with daily or almost daily use, those consuming high concentration THC, and females are presenting more to the hospital than males with this condition, with the caveat of males in some cases tend to be less likely to they're like less interested in their health. So there is that caveat there. All of these things combined, if we combine all of these, your chances of developing mental illness earlier on in life increase significantly according to the data. And you guys can read each of these things in that study. I didn't cite every individual part of the study. So what about the statistics on legal states? 25 to 30%, we already said this, of all ER visits in Colorado involved anxiety, suicidal thoughts, and psychotic symptoms. Colorado study of 4 million ER visits, 4 million ER visits, found a 5-fold greater prevalence of mental health diagnoses among ER visits with cannabis-associated codes. So people presenting to the emergency room out of 4 million people who smoked cannabis had a 5-fold likelihood of seeing more mental illness. Colorado has seen statewide significant increases in cannabis ER visits since legalization, and they've seen a significant increase in adolescent ER visits related to cannabis since legalization. Now, it's important to say, in that study, they go into the specifics of who said they had mental health issues prior to cannabis use and who said they had mental health issues after cannabis use. They break all that down in the study for those of you wondering that. Just a quick side note, suicide, obviously we had COVID. COVID in and of itself could cause psychosis. You could get social media related psychosis. That's a documented thing. You could get pornography induced psychosis. You could get energy drink induced psychosis. You guys can Google these things. You will find peer reviewed literature on it. Okay. Combine all that stuff. We've had a 4% increase in suicidal death. Now, over the last several years, we have more Americans smoking weed than we do cigarettes. I'm not saying that's a bad thing or a good thing. That's just a statistic. Now, 74% of people with acute psychotic symptoms had suicidal ideation, anxiety, and psychotic symptoms, according to a study presented to the hospital. Okay, this is terrifying. The Colorado suicide data shows a 77.5 increase in cannabis positive toxicology for suicide victims post legalization. That is insane. So they looked at this number pre-legalization and post. That's alarming to me when mental health is crashing in the US, when suicide is rising, and we're starting to see data like this come out about cannabis. I just think we have to be careful. Now, guys, of course, alcohol and opioids and that stuff outweigh these numbers. Of course they do. That goes almost without saying, but I'll say that. This is what's fascinating. And this goes back to media perception. 53% of people say that marijuana has positive effects on those whom use it. A majority of people feel that marijuana has positive effects on its users. Interesting. Canada, we could go on and on. I think that the most interesting thing in Canada that came out of the literature was on 420, the weed holiday. Canada has to ramp up their emergency services on the ground, so their ambulances and their ER physicians, because of cannabis-related mental health crises presenting to the ER. This is a 10-year study that they did. And the conclusion of this study said we need to further fund on 420 because of the mental health crises we see. This is interesting. 106 to 186 people develop schizophrenia a year in Canada induced by cannabis. And they said the cost of treating that schizophrenia on only 186 people a year has a measurable impact on a socially funded healthcare system. That's just mind-blowing to me that it could cost that much money to manage that. We could go on and on. I'm not going to go over this more, but just more stats on people presenting and symptoms that they had to the ER in another study. Right? Agitation and aggression. I think that's a big one. And I said this before, and I'll continue to say this. Someone wrote a full book on cannabis use and violence. I do think, generally speaking, cannabis is a tamer drug. We don't think of people as being violent. I've had 3 instances. One was horrific in teens, where I've had a mother, often a single mother, on the phone with me at 3 a.m. because her 18 or 19-year-old son is going ballistic stoned off of cannabis, threatening the family, slamming the doors, screaming at the sisters, throwing things at the mom. And in one of those instances, it resulted in arrest and detainment of the kid. So guys, I hate to say it, I don't see that often, but agitation is a thing. You look at some of the most notorious criminals in the world, cannabis use was very prevalent in their lifestyle. And there's a whole book on this actually out there. I'll post the name of it in the group. And obviously we have some statistics here to back that up. I'm very concerned. I work a lot with the schools, especially now. I always have, but now I'm very involved with the schools. And as we know, like we have this horrific problem in the United States of school shootings. I want to know what the toxicology reports are of the shooters. And I want to know if cannabis is present. I especially worry with the cartridges that these younger people are getting. And I'm not blaming it all on that, guys. Not at all. I'm curious though. I'm very curious. Okay. It's good for anxiety, right? There's little to no evidence to support cannabis as an anti-anxiety based medication, little to none. CBD, we could talk about differently. This was fascinating. They did a study of ER patients in the ER. So they took a bunch of patients who were in the ER and they gave them a study. And they just asked them their opinions on cannabis. These were people who had smoked before. 30% said they used it to treat anxiety, which is fascinating. 17% said they used it to treat depression. Well, currently, the literature for long-term use is saying that's a really bad idea. Yet our social perception is, oh, maybe that's a good idea. Very confusing. Just one more statistics here. What about edibles? This was in Colorado. This blew my mind. 0.32% of total cannabis sales from 14 to 16 in Colorado were edibles. 10.7% of ER visits dealing with mental health were because of edibles. I never liked edibles. I always thought they were too dangerous. I did them like twice in my life because they just messed me up. But that's fascinating. That's something to keep track of because a lot of people will say to me, Dr. Frank, I'm going to quit vaping cannabis. I'm going to quit smoking it. I'm going to switch to edibles because it's healthier. Well, maybe you're saving your lungs, but maybe that's worse on your mental health. I don't know. We're not going to go into psychosis, but there's symptoms that you guys can look for. You can Google them. This was more to my PowerPoint presentation that I did for the YouTube video. But just something to keep an eye on if you are developing pre-psychosis symptoms and you're smoking. Obviously, psychosis is not good for your mental health. That's obviously a bad thing. Other drugs, let's be honest, a lot of people who are consuming cannabis may also be consuming other substances. And I want to bring this back to the lifestyle picture. Is cannabis feeding the social media? Is it feeding the adult media? Is it feeding a coke addiction or a booze problem? Something else, binging news. Just something to think about, because if your mental health is in the gutter and you're like, wow, it's beyond cannabis, it's alcohol, it's porn, it's cigarettes, it's whatever, just something to think about. Okay, so what things are actually good for mental health? Nutrition, getting diet on track can be a huge help. Supplements, hobbies, working in a job or a career that you enjoy enough. I think work is very important, especially if you're of that working age, and that's the point where you should be at in life. That's where you are. Community, friends, and social connections, relationships, faith, exercise, meditation, reading, cold showers. All of these different things can play a role in one's mental health. So if you're not feeling good, I would just say, look at this list and how many of these things are you doing? And then the question becomes, how long have you been doing them for? If you're like 5 days into quitting cannabis, yeah, of course you don't feel good. Of course the mental health isn't good. I wouldn't expect it to be, even if you're doing all these things. It takes time and it builds over time, right? I'm now 6 years out, or no, 6 plus years out now of quitting cannabis. And these things slowly came together over time. And my mental health is probably in the best place it's been within maybe the last half year, maybe since January, which coordinates to also when I stopped drinking. Like I'd have occasional alcoholic beverages on weekends. I don't know, maybe that coordinates. And it's amazing, guys. I'll throw this out there real quick. My Sober October group knows this. I had a lapse. I'll call it a lapse, not full blown relapse, but I got back into some adult media content, social media, binging it. That's why this October I haven't been doing much with that, posting and doing as much as I normally do. And wow, what an impact that has had by stepping away from that. Like I just cannot believe it. Every time I go through this, how lousy that stuff can make you feel. It blows my mind. Is weed blocking your solution? Is weed standing in the way of you solving your mental health problems, or at least giving yourself the opportunity to start and try to solve them? And I often tell people, if your mental health is in the gutter and you've been struggling with weed addiction, maybe quitting is the mental health confidence. Maybe that's the boost that you need. Maybe that's the change that you need to start to rebuild your mental health. Quitting and committing to quitting and staying dedicated to it and seeing it through. Maybe that's the boost that your brain was looking for. The last kind of thing here that I'll say that I liked being reminded of recently with Dr. Anna Lemke on our YouTube video, and this really resonated me with her book. I get sad, I get happy, I get stressed, I get anxious, I get mad. I have all of those emotions from week to week. And in the past, when I was addicted to weed, I was like, I didn't think I should ever be depressed. I didn't think I should ever be anxious. So when I would feel those emotions, I would run to the drug. And as I learned, by seeking more pleasure, the only thing I actually got was more pain. Had I leaned into some of these things a little bit, I think I would have resulted in a lot more pleasure a lot earlier on in my life. But I think it's nice to know that the why me probably doesn't apply as much as we think it does. And this is a mentality that develops in addiction. Why me? Like, why did this happen to me? Why is my day so shitty? Why is this happening? Chances are it's happening to a lot of other people too. Just something to keep in mind. And that to me was interesting to hear, like, oh, you get depressed too. Like that happens, but you like work through it. Odd. Here's the good news. It can get better. 100%, guys, it can get better, but you got to remove those blocks and you got to start to sort through it. Cognitive behavioral therapy, motivational talk therapy, peer-to-peer work, obviously quitting weed. Those are all things that can play a role in helping with one's mental health if it's been damaged by weed. And these are some of the most researched things. Now, everyone at the end of this who is in this call is going to get an email, and you're going to have a link where you can join our Addiction Mindset Accountability community, where we have chats like this every Wednesday night. Usually they're not this structured, but I opened this one up tonight to everyone because after, like, within 2 days, I'm going to close that community until January so I can focus on the people that are in it now, because we need to put more attention to it. And then in January, I'll reopen it with our January challenge that we'll be doing. So if you want to join this, if you want to do this every Wednesday and get together with a great group of people, check your email. And then there'll be other links in there too, as well as the replay. You guys will have a private link to a private replay of this in case you want to rewatch it again at some point. And that ends everything. Now, I am going to pull this up and I am going to check the comments and I'm going to see what people are saying. And then I'm going to try and pull people up. Okay, good. People could hear me. That would have been bad if no one could. Oh yeah, Lance, acknowledging I would think a million times a break is coming soon at work. So I would, just that thought. Yeah, Lance, one of the most powerful things I took away from that Dr. Anna Lemke video, I asked her this, and you guys might have seen it, so I won't beat on this. But I said, what about your reward, Dr. Lemke? I said, like, that's something that's still in my head. literally up until that video, I would sometimes struggle with like, what's my reward at night then? And she said, imagine you didn't have one. Like, just imagine you were in the moment and you were embracing that moment and you were going to go home and just do whatever it is next. What if you weren't rushing yourself for a reward all the time? And do you really deserve a reward 24/7? That advice to me was like eye-opening, just the idea of eliminating the need for a constant reward. Okay. Jaden, during my breaks, my dreams are so vivid. I feel like I experienced it yesterday. Yeah, the dreams are crazy when you quit smoking. The dreams, everyone's talking about the dreams, the dreams, the dreams. Yeah, of course, of course. Okay. Joe Supervillain says, I've quit for about 2 weeks and the cravings are hard. It's amazing how you can go and past the hard cravings. It's amazing how you can go from wanting it all the time. Now I'm having these fantasies in my head that if I smoke again, it will be this amazing time staying sober, but the cravings have changed shape. Yeah, when we first quit, the cravings are like, I'm craving to like lessen these withdrawal symptoms. And then when you start doing better, the cravings are, oh, maybe weed could enhance feeling better even more. Yeah, the cravings absolutely change shape. Addiction is a very manipulative thing, but Joe, the big thing is that you're identifying, hey, that's addiction talking. That's still addiction, just in a different shape. And just by calling it out, I think is a very powerful thing. Okay, let's see here. I see Kim in here. I see Kim. Yep. Hello, Kim. It always counts. We'll have a replay up for you guys. Let's see. I had 3 psychotic outbreaks triggered by weed. Yeah, guys, I'm gonna hope if Cindy's in here, I'm gonna have. I'm not sure if she was able to make it tonight, but if she is, I'm gonna try and pull her up. Yeah, she is. If she'll want to talk, because I would love for her to talk, and I'm actually gonna let her talk soon. Oh yeah, weed used to be the anti-system. Now it's part of the system. Yeah, unfortunately, I think it has taken on that switch, and that's not a change that I really wanted to see. I don't know. It gets dangerous, I think, when pharma gets involved, and it gets really greedy. Things get really, really greedy. And guys, this is my thing on weed. Just let's not be extreme. Right? When weed first came out, they were extreme. This is bad. This is going to kill you. It's going to cause psychosis guaranteed. It's going to make men and women leave from their wives and blah, blah, blah. Right? That movie, whatever that parody was. All right. Well, it became a parody. We just need to have honest conversation. That's all I ask when I talk to people. I'm like, look, here's my side. I'm bringing the negatives. Someone else bring me the positives. I'm happy to see it. Let's have honest and honest, balanced conversation. Yeah, waking up daily from my 50 milligram night dose never got better. It is weed causing. Yeah. Not anymore. Great. Weed is a lot stronger than it used to be. Yeah, Jay, Jeff, absolutely. Weed is so much stronger. We're dealing with different drugs. The rate at which people are consuming it, what people are consuming, it's a completely different story now. Now, I gotta see if Cindy wants to talk at all. Cindy, do you want to say hi at all, Cindy Mancia?
Hi, yeah, how are you?
Good. Cindy, I want to hear from you because a lot of people in here may not know you. And when we first did a one-on-one consultation, and then when you first quit, you hopped into our group, and you had a rough start, being honest. Like, you had the psychosis, you had the delusions, you had the extreme end of what weed can do to one's mental health. Now,
Yeah.
I think you're over like 100 something days away from it. And I just want to ask, how are you doing? Like, what do you got?
I am doing so good. I am 127 days in today, so I'm a little over 4 months. I am doing really good. I am so excited. With every day that passes, I feel so much better. And the psychosis, like there's days, where when I have a little bit of derealization or depersonalization sometimes, but it's nothing like it used to be. And mental health was like one of my biggest focuses on why I quit, just because, like you mentioned, I was just not enjoying it anymore. It's not something that I was, the high wasn't the same. I was just smoking to smoke and just to have that habit. And no, it's gotten so much better. I have I have changed my whole entire life. I feel like I have regained, charge of my life, and everything that you had on those points on the things that you can do to improve. I feel like I've tried a little bit of everything. I still take cold showers like every other day or every day, because it's just something that really helps me out, and it just really grounds me. And I've changed my whole entire nutrition. I've been supplementing as well. I went to the doctor. I found out I had a vitamin D deficiency as well. And once I started taking more vitamin D, it like really helped a lot with my anxiety, with my depression that I was facing. Yeah, no, it's been a major change for me compared to how I was when I started, when, I texted you. And, just to give some background, I found Dr. Frank's videos, and I had texted him one Wednesday when it was going to be one of these sessions, when it was just once a month, I think it used to be. Um, and I have not stopped joining or following through with the community ever since. This has been a big blessing for me when it comes to just my life in general and focusing on what really matters, which is me and my health. So yeah, no, I've been doing really good.
Cindy, that is just so cool, because I remember times too during it, and I remember talking to you in these community calls, and you'd be like, okay, I'm at like 30 days, and I remember you saying like today was rough. Like you're like, I'm 30 days out, I'm 40 days out. And like I remember you talking about driving, I think,
Yeah.
and being overwhelmed driving by like just the sky and the sensory input. And
Mhm.
I just kept saying, I was like, hang in there. Can we get to 90 days? Can we get to 90 days? I promise. I promise. And it's so cool hearing you now, like, because it's like, oh, good. My promises were kind of coming true. So that's
Yeah.
good.
Oh, and I remember we would talk about like that glass breaking. I was just waiting for like that glass break feeling, and it finally happened. And it did happen a little bit over the 90 days. I think it was like hitting 100 days where I was like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm waking up, I'm feeling better. And yeah, it's good.
Cindy, would you mind just explaining real quick, and then I'll let you move. Would you mind explaining? We have some people asking what psychosis felt like for you, or kind of what was going on. Do you remember some of the symptoms that you had going on?
Yeah, no, my psychosis was really bad. I had major derealization and depersonalization. I didn't feel real. I would look at my hands and I felt like they were just inanimate objects. Like it was just not me. My family, people close to me didn't seem familiar to me, even though I was talking to them. Just the world didn't seem like it was real. I just felt like a horror movie. I couldn't even watch TV for a while. I couldn't even listen to music because it was just so triggering to me that everything was not in my world. So it was really bad. I couldn't. And I remember I would always watch, scary movies. I couldn't watch any scary movies because they would put me in a really, really ugly state when it came to my brain. I couldn't sleep. I had really bad insomnia. I would wake up with panic attacks, and I would just wake up not feeling real in my room. Like it felt like a nightmare. Honestly, it was really, really bad. The biggest thing was, like you mentioned earlier, when I consistently kept going to work, and I worked 8 to 9 hours a day, which was really difficult for me. I remember we have a whiteboard in my office, and just looking at it, and everything written on it just didn't feel like I could feel like I could just grab things. And the sky was so scary to me. Looking at the clouds and just looking up was really difficult. And I know we talked a little bit about, I smoked for 8 years, just to give background on you people here. And I smoked for a really long time. And towards the end of it, I was very heavy usage on the cartridges, and higher concentrations and oils and things like that. So yeah, no, it was really difficult for me on my brain. I couldn't really focus, and not sleeping, I think, was also a big impact because I was not getting enough rest, and it just made it worse.
Cindy, thank you so much for sharing that with people, because I'm sure there's a lot of people here with questions with that. Thank you for being so open about that. guys, and it's awesome that you made it tonight. It's awesome that you're here. What a perfect topic to have you here on. Does anyone else in here, let me see if we have any questions. Does anyone have any questions? If you want to throw it in the chat, or let me see here. Okay. Okay, so let me see here. Jaden, are you comfortable popping on a conversation real quick?
Yeah, how you guys doing?
Good. Jaden, so why don't you tell people what you just threw out in the comments? Oh, and Cindy too. Everyone said congratulations in the comments. Jeff, everyone was saying congratulations. I want to throw that out there. Jaden, tell me what's going on here with the anxiety. So you've been smoking for a while. Tell me the background with this anxiety here.
Yeah, so like I said in the comments, it's been like I've been smoking daily for 3 years, and then literally out of nowhere, like I said, last August, I felt like I was like, is it weed or did I just get an anxiety disorder like out of nowhere? I didn't think it would be weed because I've been smoking for 3 years, and then I would smoke to relieve the anxiety. It would relieve it while I'm high, but then when I was off of it, it would get really bad, and I'd be stuck in like a loop of like, do I need to smoke to help my anxiety or is the weed causing it? And I just didn't know, like I just said, I didn't know if it would be like, developing anxiety disorder out of nowhere, or weed just kept catching up to me after 3 years. And I just felt like I was stuck in like a rabbit hole loop.
Okay. So I can tell you the easiest way to figure that out, and it will save you a hell of a lot of time and a hell of a lot of money and a hell of a lot of doctor's visits, is by quitting. And I see you're on day 6 and you're striving for 30 days. So that's awesome. Like, one, congratulations on 6 days.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, of course. And like, just keep in mind, man, it's somewhere usually like days, maybe 3 to 5, 3 to 7, where withdrawals tend to peak. So don't be shocked if you get like a burst of anxiety. And then I'll tell you again, it's usually at 2 weeks and then around 30 days where you might get hit with another wave of emotions, including anxiety. So just be aware of that when it comes to the withdrawal kind of timeline, and anxiety spikes 2 weeks and again at 30 days. But if you can get through that, you're going to start to get more of an answer. And really, I would push for 90 days. I'd push for 90, but obviously, one day at a time. Don't like overwhelm yourself with it. But because look, if you quit and the anxiety starts to go away or starts to dissipate, you just saved yourself a hell of a lot of doctor's appointments, a hell of a lot of anxiety about just randomly developing anxiety. Now you got an explanation as to what happened. So yeah. And I can tell you from what you're saying, like, that's a common perception. I've been doing this for so long. Why is it bad for me now? And I'll just use an example like type 2 diabetes. Okay. And this isn't like, again, saying when it has type 2, my dad has it, it runs in my family already bad, but this is just a simple example. I could use cigarettes, the same thing. Okay, Jaden. So like, I've eaten sugar a majority of my childhood. If I continue to eat sugar how I ate sugar from the ages of 5 years old to maybe 18, eventually that sugar is going to turn into type 2 diabetes for me, right? So it's the same thing too. Someone smokes cigarettes since they were 15, they develop lung cancer when they're 50, and they're like, oh, how the hell did I just develop lung cancer? I've been smoking since I was 15 and I haven't had a problem. No, there was a problem building the entire time. So Jaden, yeah, I would tell you in this case with weed, it's no different of a scenario. In this case, you've been smoking. You're replacing those endocannabinoids with phytocannabinoids. The system's slowly getting out of whack. And boom, one day you wake up and now you have this random anxiety disorder just out of nowhere. And maybe you've had some other life circumstances that fed into the situation, like I said, that it's not just weed, but maybe there was some other things that participated it. I don't know the word that I'm looking for, perpetuated it. But yeah, that's how it happens, man. You heard Cindy, Cindy didn't always have psychosis when she smoked. I was getting panic attacks on a nightly basis towards the end of my smoking, and I had never had panic attacks before, ever. And my brain was saying, Frank, oh my God, you have panic attacks now. Smoke more weed to fall asleep. Smoke through this panic attack, when it was weed causing it the whole time. So I think you're stuck in that cycle. And I think your brain, that addicted voice in your brain, is trying to manipulate you best it can to thinking it's not the weed. But just based on what you told me and where you're at, the fact that you don't have like some extensive history of anxiety and stuff, I think it's a safe bet to say it's the weed, and you're going to save yourself a lot of agony by quitting. So when you're sitting there and you're like, man, this sucks, this is hard, I'm on day 6, and day 14 comes around and you're like, damn, I got a craving. Just, you're going to struggle with weed addiction. You're going to struggle a little bit while you're quitting, but at least you're quitting with the intention of finding out what's going on. If you just keep smoking, you could wind up chasing this rabbit hole for forever, for literally the foreseeable future. And then you're just going to become part of the system, man. Here's another guy that's going to do all these therapy appointments. Here's a guy that we're going to prescribe all these medications to. You'll be a cash cow for someone one day. And I don't want to see that if it doesn't have to be the case. Right now, maybe you quit and you quit for a year and you're like, damn, I still have problems. Well, then, yeah, of course, go get it assessed, go get it looked at. But, because yes, there are things that go wrong where people need help. So, okay. Did that answer your question, Jaden?
Yeah, thank you very much. Like at first when I tried, like, maybe do I take a 30-day break, that seemed as realistic as jumping to the moon. So I started thinking like, all right, maybe I could do gradually. So I would do like an every other day, 4 days. And I just realized like that shit is not working for me. Like I need to cut this out. So like now that I'm already on day 6, like I already feel better. My anxiety is easing a little bit, but like back when it first started, like in August, like I feel like someone else is controlling me. Like I'm watching a dream. And one time I got a panic attack so bad, like I didn't even like choose to pick up. Like I had a card at the time. It was like my hand went over like a machine, and I just had to inhale it. Like the panic attack just got so horrible.
Yeah, and I see this all the time with cards. You just referenced cards, Jaden. Like if I was a gambling man, which unironically I'm not, I would bet it's that. I see this all the time with cards. When it comes to cartridges, cartridges I think are going to be a huge problem. Medical grade or not medical grade, I think we're in for a massive problem with cartridges.
So you think anxiety is much more of a risk with cart than bud?
Absolutely. Now, that's not to say though that there's not people who get anxiety from smoking bud, because what I don't want to happen is, because this is what will happen if you're on day 6, and if that voice in your head is real smart, it's going to interpret that as, oh, Frank just told me smoke bud, don't smoke carts. So like, just watch out for that. But yes, I do see it as more of a risk with carts. And that's what that literature was saying too, with edibles, and like carts just tend to be a much higher potency thing. And I don't know if you're getting them from a dispensary or where they're coming from, but especially if they're not from like a licensed state regulated dispensary, then you're really,
which they're not.
Oh, so yeah, man, you're really asking for trouble. I mean, mine weren't either. I was smoking dank vape cartridges when I was smoking a Mario Kart's dank vape carts. I know Cindy was into some stuff. I know we got Lance in here. Lance was very heavy into some heavy dab usage. We have Kimbo in here, who is very heavy into some weed, some heavy cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome. Yeah, Jaden, I can tell you, like, I would 99.9% bet that it's the carts in your case, just from this brief conversation.
Yeah, I literally said enough is enough. Like I'm literally only a sophomore in college. I locked all my shit in my trunk, parked across campus, completely restricted my access, trying to go for 30 days, like I said.
Yeah, man, get pushed for 30 days, dude. You could dramatically change the trajectory of your life, in my opinion, in the next 30 days. And maybe 30 days becomes 60 days, and maybe 60 days becomes 90 days. Your biggest thing is what I think you'll run into if you get to the 30 days is going to be, you start feeling better and then you relapse because you feel better. Oh, this isn't so bad. I feel fine. The anxiety went away. I'm just going to smoke again. That's if you get to the 30 days, which you should, that's probably going to be your biggest risk, is just actually feeling good again.
Yeah, going off what you just said there, like my main goal was like I need to get off dependency. Like I cannot eat or sleep without this. So I was thinking like 30 days, but I wanted to like go 30 days and then maybe smoke like once in a while, like I don't know, once every 3 weeks, just like on a special occasion. Or do you think I should just quit forever and never go back?
Yeah, man. I mean, I let, if you're asking me my opinion, obviously you're probably asking the wrong guy. Based on everything you've just told me, I'd say you should probably just quit. But I leave it open to people, man. I say if people want to go back and experiment with it, go back and experiment. Now I can tell you, like I've talked to Jeff, Cindy, Kim, a lot of people in this group that I recognize, Lance. They've experimented, man. They've tried for years. Like they've tried for years, as did I. I went probably 6, 7 years strong smoking or whatever. When is enough with experimenting? That then becomes the question. Like, how many years does someone have to experiment? How many panic attacks do they have to have? How many episodes of psychosis does someone have to have before they say, okay, enough is enough? And if you are getting really bad symptoms and you're teetering on psychosis, with some of this new information coming out, that freaks me out. Like, had I known, like, oh my God, Frank, like you're maybe one mental breakdown away from developing schizophrenia, that probably would have fear mongered me into quitting. Like, not that that's how I want people to quit, but had I known that and been like old enough to comprehend what that meant, I probably just would have said, okay, I'm done. Like that scared me enough to, that would scare me. That would scare me more than the idea of cancer from smoking, to be honest. Although that might sound ridiculous to some people, that would probably scare me more. So, yeah, man, that's my take. It's up to you. You're more than welcome to go experiment after a few days, but is it worth it? Like, is it worth it? Like, what are you going to get from weed that makes it worth risking going through this again? I don't know. Maybe there's something there, but for me, there wasn't. And for a lot of people here tonight, there wasn't. So, but I get it though. You're a sophomore in college. You're at a different point in life than I am.
Yeah, I would just have to think about like after 30 days, like you said, oh, I'm anxiety free. I would just have to think about when it got to my worst point. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man. It's one of my favorite quotes is go back to the last time you smoked, not the first time you smoked, right? So this is the last time you smoked. Here you are in a group call about weed and mental health, listening to people share some horror stories about it. This is very, very different from the first time you smoked, I'm going to assume, where you were probably having fun with your friends in high school or college or whatever it was. So, yeah, man, just something to consider. But where I'd start, get to 30 days, maybe you get to 60 days and then reassess, see where you're at. If your life is better, why risk screwing it up again? That would be my thing.
Yeah, man, I like that quote a lot. Go back to the last time you smoked, not your first. I just wrote that on my little break calendar.
That's a good one from my.
Keep me going right there.
That's a really good one, man. That's from my buddy Connor. His name is Clean and Serene on TikTok. And I think we have a recording somewhere in our Addiction Mindset accountability community. If you wind up joining that via email after this, you could watch the replay with him. But he dropped a lot of good gems like that. So yeah, it's true though. It's true. Our brain always goes back to those good times. And it's like, I don't know, man. I don't want to go back to, the first time I smoked was with my buddies in a college apartment. We're laughing, we're eating food, we're having fun. The last time I smoked was not good. I was in a really, really bad place. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's like it's good until it isn't.
That's exactly right. Like, and that answers your question. Like, how is it good until it isn't? Like a lot of things in life, shit changes, right? It's good until it isn't. Like my job at Vitamin Shop, which if anyone here works at Vitamin Shop, great job. It was one of my favorite jobs, but for me, it was a good job until it wasn't. You know what I mean? I was like, shit, I need more money. This was a good job until it wasn't. So like, yeah, a lot of things in life tend to have that exact same trajectory. So, good stuff. Good talking to you, Jaden.
Yeah, thank you for your insight. I appreciate you a lot.
Yeah, of course. I think that was helpful for a lot of people. So, all right, let's see here. So yeah. So Julio, do you want to hop on at all? Let's see if Julio's still in here.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, perfect. I can hear you. Julio, so you've been smoking for 33 years, for a
Yeah.
long time. And I think I saw in the comments here, you said you're a month into your quit.
Yes. I started my quit a year ago. Well, more than a year ago when my mother passed away, because when I got stoned after my mother passed away, I had this I mean, the sadness became exponential. You see, I felt so much worse. I thought weed was gonna, well, make me feel better, but it actually made me feel so much worse. So from an emotional point of view, it was what triggered me to stop, because I felt so much worse. So then after 33 years, I had tried quitting other times, but it was really, really hard. So what I did was I did like 2 months on, 1 month off, and I took it from there. And each time I tried, each time I relapsed. You can call it relapsed, but to me it was a tapering.
Sure.
Each time it was easier. You know, each time I tried, it became easier, and the withdrawal symptoms became smoother. So I hope this is my definite quit, which I started. Actually, it's gonna be a month tomorrow, and honestly, I've been having minimal withdrawals. I mean, I can eat. Actually, let me tell you, in daytime, I have no problems at all. I don't even think about weed anymore. But at night, when my subconscious runs loose, that's my challenge. You know, that's when it's hard for me. And also, I do some meditation, and my teachers told me that these thoughts of consuming in the future, it's because once the brain, how can I say, experiences some kind of a pleasure thing, it will always try to go back to it, you know, even if it harms us, you know. But I think it's important to see those thoughts, because when I'm meditating, like I do 20 minutes every day, and I get this thought, oh man, like someone said going to California and he gets triggered, and those are irrational thoughts. If you think about it, you know, it's just your brain thinking. So I like to put them aside and try to, how can I know, analyze them and ignore them in a way, because it's just trash from my brain, you know, telling me maybe in the future when you go to the beach you will want to go smoke some weed, and it's totally irrational, you see. And I think that's helping me. But I do consider that at least in my case, I mean, it was a lot. I mean, 33 years was a long time, and I relate to everything you say. I mean, and actually, I want to thank you, because you were the person also who could I relate to, and motivate me to do this, you know. And I think this is going to be the good one. I suppose. I hope.
Julio, that's awesome. Thank you for taking the time to share that with everyone, and how you went about quitting, and all of that stuff. That all I can say is congratulations, and thanks for popping in, because without people attending these things and without people watching the channel and supporting it, none of this would be here today. So I just right back at you. Thank you. Thank you for taking the time to say that, and props. Congratulations on all that.
Thank you, Dr. Frank.
Yeah, it's awesome. Very good, guys. Okay. Kabir said something interesting, which is in Delta 8, the Delta 8 cartridges. Yeah, guys, we've talked about this before. I think I said this. I don't remember if it was the Sober October group or one of the groups, but there's always going to be, especially with federal legalization, there's always going to be a new strain, a new Delta 10, Delta 8, Delta 9.5. It doesn't matter. And the sad thing is, a lot of people are going to get sucked into it. And one of my favorite things about quitting is actually not caring. Like I see the vape shops, even here in New York, where it's not totally legal recreationally. We got this in, we got that in. And there's a vape shop right next to my work that sells a bunch of stuff. And to not care is one of the most freeing things in the world. To see that and be like, wow, I truly don't care. It's nothing more than an idea for a TikTok video or a YouTube video for me at this point. So yeah, the Delta 8, Kabir, though, to answer your question, not question, just to comment. Yeah, it's a mess in schools, man. It's a mess. And what's happening is Delta 8 is so unregulated, especially here in New York, where you just have whatever going into it. I see a lot of kids going off a Delta 8 cart. Sad. It's sad. It's unfortunate. STU, getting sober in my 20s. That would be great. An impulse I have thrown one day at a time. Life is so much better. Yeah, getting sober in your 20s is a great thing. I obviously, you know, I say the younger you do it, the better, but it doesn't matter what age you're at. You know, there's no good or bad time. Yeah, Jeff, do you want to pop on and say, I love how you threw out that book, Rational Recovery. And I think Julio was just kind of speaking to that a little bit. Jeff, why did you like the book, Rational Recovery? That's one of my favorite books, guys, when it comes to addiction rehab. Why did you like that so much?
Well, here it is for those that that's what it looks like. I liked it because, and I share this in our Sober October group. I've been to 12-step meetings a lot, trying to quit over 40 years of smoking weed. I'm 62 years old now. And every time I go to a 12-step meeting, it was always something for me about, I'm the problem, I'm an addict, and all that. And I got tired, I believe a lot in positive affirmations and self-talk. What you say to yourself means a lot. So I really struggled with that. But this is the first book I've ever read that kind of dispels a lot of that myth. I personally, I didn't know why I had a problem, but when there's a recovery program that was developed in 1930, and we've come a long way with mental health issues and understanding the brain and what goes on, to still be doing the same thing never made sense to me when you got a relapse rate of 95% in those programs. It's like, I couldn't comprehend that. So this is the first book that kind of said, hey, there's this addict voice inside your head. And whenever you hear that addict voice talking, you can shut that off. You just have to become stronger than that. Once you shut it off, it starts to lose its power. And so as I was reading that book over and getting through that book, it just made sense to me. And I don't know, Dr. Frank, why it's easier for me now than it has in the past to quit, because I read that book first before I got into Sober October. But the book helped me realize that, no, you don't have to go and talk about how bad you are and how all this shit's your problem and yada, yada, yada. It's no, you can stop right now if you choose to and just be aware of that addict voice. And what's amazing, you hear it in other people trying to quit and early, you hear it all the time. You're like, well, what if this? Well, I know there is no what if. I mentioned why I want to stop is because I want to see what it's like to live a life free of being stoned. And so that's why I really love the book. And I think that it's a great way to give a different perspective on overcoming addiction, and I think that when you can, and I've always believed, and for those that aren't spiritual, my apologies on this, but I've always believed the same power that raised Jesus from the dead dwells inside me. And if that power is inside me, I can beat that addictive voice, and I don't have to go to a big, and I view this group here not as this is a conversation, and it's talking about how great things are going to be, not dwelling on all the bad stuff in the past. And that's where I want to be. I want to be where I am now. And that's what this book talks about, where you are now, how you can change your life, and how you need to be aware of that addictive voice and recognize when it's coming up. So that's kind of why I am a fan of that book.
I love it, Jeff. Thank you for that explanation. I think that was perfect.
One thing real quick, and
yeah,
this is a business idea for you, Dr. Frank, so you can figure out how to make it happen if it makes sense. But here's my calendar as I've been Xing off this month, okay, of every day. I think there needs to be a calendar that's full of X's for the year, and you wipe off your clean days. So you clear your calendar, instead of Xing off your days that you were sober, find a way of having a calendar that's already X'd out. This is your life, you keep smoking, or just start wiping off your clean days. So anyway, I thought I'd throw that out for you. I was thinking about that today, which is stuff I didn't think about when I was smoking. Now I'm thinking about opportunities again. So
I was going to say that might be a business opportunity. I could see that. That would be a pretty profitable one too, I think, because calendars aren't very expensive to make. So that could be an interesting idea.
Add that to your addiction mindset.
that might pop in somewhere. That's interesting. Wiping out clean days. This is good. All right, Jeff. Thank you very much. All right, guys. So I want to pull up here. I want to pull up Nolan. Nolan, are you still in the chat?
Yeah.
Nolan, tell me what's going on here. So you left a comment. You haven't quit weed yet, which is fine. There's a lot of people here who haven't, and maybe they're just not saying much. And some of these people, Nolan, just recently quit. Some people have quit for a very long time. Tell me what's going on. So you're trying to quit for a federal job?
Yeah, I want to become a aviation mechanic. So
Awesome.
they drug test. So I would have to quit in order to get that job. So
Yeah,
I just
of
haven't-
course.
I just haven't done it yet.
Have you tried quitting before?
Yeah, I quit like 2 years ago. I started smoking during COVID. So like 2021, I went to rehab. I quit for 90 days and then I started again and I haven't quit since. So it's just like to that point again where I'm starting to get more anxiety about quitting.
Why did you quit in the past times? Why did you quit those other times?
Uh, like the first and only time I quit, like I only quit one time. Is like I went on vacation and I just had really bad withdrawals. And so when I got back, my mom put me in rehab and
Mhm.
it just got better.
Okay, so you were kind of like so you were on vacation with withdrawals, and then your family put you in rehab.
Yeah.
If you weren't going for this aviation job, would you still have any interest in quitting?
Not if the job required a like drug test.
What if the job didn't require a drug test anymore? Would you still want to quit?
Um, Not right now, but in the long run, yes, because I've seen it like lacks you in motivation. So I want to be motivated. I want to do good in life. So I would
What
eventually
is
quit.
what is it that appeals to you about the aviation job?
I've always just been a hands-on person. I never just wanted to sit behind a desk and do paperwork and talk to people all day. So that's
Mhm.
basically it.
So there's a lot. So you could have gone into sales or something else. Why federal aviation?
Like I'm a tall person, so I wanted to be a mechanic when I was younger. So leaning over in cars all day would be a struggle, and like with my
Would be a
back
struggle.
and like in the long run. So and you get better pay being an aviation mechanic. So
Okay. So you're thinking about pay, you're
yeah,
thinking about physical health. Federal means there's probably federal benefits with it too, right?
yeah,
So you're thinking ahead about your future and stuff like that. That's interesting, man. That's fascinating to me because I think there's going to be a few things. I tell people it's tough when you're quitting for a job, because eventually you're going to get that job. And once you get that job, you may be able to start smoking again. Just being honest, like there's a good chance you will be able to. So there's that.
yeah,
And I oftentimes people will lose their jobs due to an addiction, whether it's alcohol, weed, cocaine, it doesn't matter, amphetamines. People will eventually lose their jobs due to the drugs, which the conclusion to that is a job is not in many cases, in my opinion, like a good enough reason to quit. It's a reason to quit, but
mhm,
not a good enough reason. And I just listening to you talk, it's interesting to me that you're saying, look, I eventually want to quit smoking weed, just not right now. But
mhm,
then when I ask you why you go into federal aviation, you have these like really well thought out answers. Like, I'm concerned about my future career, federal benefits. I'm concerned about my physical health in my body. I don't want to be stuck behind a desk all day. Like, you have very good reasons for wanting to go into federal aviation.
mhm,
And I would think, especially after a conversation like this, if I were looking at like from a mental health standpoint, and if that's a concern of yours, or from a health standpoint, is weed going to benefit your health or work against your health? Because, like, if you're, for example, if you're worried like about a mechanic position working against your health, why aren't you worried about cannabis working against your health? Do you get what I'm saying?
yeah,
So, like, and this is just kind of like a shotgun thought crammed into a very brief conversation between me and
yeah,
you. But I personally, I think there's other reasons you want to quit smoking. And you probably got to figure out what those are to quit
yeah,
successfully.
yeah.
that's what I'm getting at right now. And and my concern would be, I don't know how much of a smoking problem it is or isn't for you. So like for you, smoking might not be a big problem. Like you might be like, Frank, I can smoke, I can perform and work, I can get jobs, like I perform well while I'm high. So my concern, let's say that's not the case. Let's say you quit for 60 days, you get the aviation job, you start up smoking again heavy, and then eventually that addiction takes that job away from you. Because remember, if you're struggling with addiction, which I'm not saying you aren't, like I don't know you, but you're here, so presumably there's something to that. Addiction does not want to see you succeed, because the more you succeed, the less you need the drug. So if you get into that job and you're doing good and you're really enjoying it and things are going well, that does not bid well for addiction. That does not bid well for weed. So if it can sneak its way back in there, and how it would probably do it would be, hey, Nolan, you got the job. Don't worry about it. They only drug test once a year. Screw it. Just start smoking again. That would suck. Like if you landed your dream job and then lost it because of weed, that would suck. Because I don't understand where weed fits into some of those other life goals that you just explained to me that you have, that line up with that job. Like I understand how the aviation job moves you towards those life goals and how that would make you feel good, right? Physically, mentally, you're not behind a desk, blah, 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 higher grade of pay, more worth your while. I don't see where weed would fit into that set of goals that you just listed for me. So that's what I would think about more. And then to answer your question, last thing, we just had an example of Julio talking about how he did his kind of tapering method to quit. And I have tons of people in this chat, Kim, Lance, Cindy, Jeff, who did a cold turkey method. And there's more here too, guys. I just can't scroll down. I don't know how many people we have in here. John, I see, like, I know we have more people who've gone cold turkey. So it really just depends on the person, man. I tried weaning off slowly many times. And for me, it just always led back to use. So for me, it was cold turkey. Obviously for Julio, he did a tapering type method. And for him, it's working really well right now. So it really just depends on the person. I am more a fan of cold turkey, but there's not a right or a wrong way to do it. Just like Julio's 30 days are just as much as, Jeff's 30 days. You know what I mean? They're equally valuable. They just got there a different route. So that's all. That's all. But I hope that answers some of your questions or gives you some stuff to think about.
Yeah, thank you for responding to my comment.
Anytime, man. It's an important one, because I think I think you're overlooking some things. So maybe just try and think a little deeper about that.
Okay.
And that might help. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Very good. Jeff needs royalties on the calendar. You're correct, Kabir. That is the proper way of thinking. All right, let's see here. Yeah, guys, you guys will get an email of the recording, and I want to call out. Let's see here. Okay, so you started a YouTube channel. That's awesome for Latin Americans in Spain. That's super exciting. Yeah, YouTube is like therapy for me too. YouTube is like a therapy. Kim, I don't know if you want to do this or if you're near it, but if you're anywhere near your calendar, Kim, I would love to see your calendar with the X's in it, but I don't know where you're at right now. So Kim, are you on here, Kimbo, or what's going on? We'll see if sometimes the connection gets a little funky between us. Hold on. You're muted. I'm going to ask you to unmute, or maybe I can unmute you. All I can do is ask. We'll see. Let's see here, Kim. You're still muted. Oh, I think we lost the screen. I lost the screen there, and Kim is currently muted. But guys, for those of you who don't know Kim has been with me from there it is, and it's unmuted. Okay, we're good, Kim. So I'll explain this, guys, while Kim looks. She's been on my YouTube for a while, and she quit. She quit cold turkey, horrible CHS symptoms. And this is someone who really minus the support of our YouTube community, she wasn't even in this community until recently, who really did it. And it's pretty cool to see that. And Kim, I like seeing her calendars because she just has X's lined up for days on end here. And we'll see if she's able to locate those or if it comes through. But her connection gets a little funky sometimes in here. So we might not see it tonight, but we'll see if it pops up. In the meantime.
Okay,
Okay.
here's June. You see it?
You know what, Kim? It's just a black screen at the
You
moment.
see June?
Oh, yeah, there we go. We got it. Okay, we're good.
Oh. There's June, cold turkey. I've been with you over 2 years, but June, there's all my, I keep a journal. This is July.
Yes. 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 I see it. That is, yeah, color coded, everything. That's right. You make notes on it and all that stuff over 2 years. Oh, Kim, that looks so beautiful. All color coded and stuff like that. That's awesome. It's real choppy, Kim. So I don't know what you're getting or not getting from us, but this is just fantastic. That's great. I think it froze, but that's okay. You guys got a glimpse of that. I always like seeing what Kim's up to with the calendar. Okay. So I'm going to just scroll through this. When I first went through
October. And he's
Kim, thank you. And I'm glad that you were able to make it here tonight. Yeah, the calendars work for a lot of things. The calendars work for a lot of things. Okay. So I always like seeing Kim's calendar. Okay. Now, so I think, yeah, guys, I will send an email to everyone who was in here specifically with a private replay for this session. And then in the email, if you decide you want to do a one-on-one call, or if you decide you want to join this group, there's a link to where you guys can join that stuff, and you'll get that email by tomorrow. And then, like I said, this group is going to stay open for like 48 hours. And then I'm just, if you're not already in it, I'm going to close it down till about January so I can focus on the people here. Okay, guys, this was a lot of fun. We did a lot. I'm sure we'll all be back together again next Wednesday. For those of you guys in my Sober October group, we're going to be back together on Friday. And then Kim is ending this by showing us she's got the bone broth, which is super helpful. So she had really bad CHS. So that's why she's showing bone broth. And that has to do with like withdrawals for anyone who was struggling while they were like to eat
I
or
live
to get,
on it.
yeah, to get nutrients in. 100%, Kim. It's a chance. Yeah, because eating can be like a horrible thing for people. In bone broth, you at least get some nutrients and some protein and things like that.
You taught me. You saved me. I listened to every word you said. Nobody's been able to get me off this stuff but you.
Kim, that's a huge compliment. And honestly, you've been here for, like you said, over 2 years. So it's thanks to people like you who stuck with the channel through both good and bad videos and made all this possible. So honestly, thank you. It's equally, it's mutual. It's mutual. So
I salute you.
Yeah, Kim, right back at you, right back at everyone here. All right, guys, it was a pleasure. We'll be back next Wednesday. Okay. And Kim, I'll tag you when we post the things to make sure that you see that you got them all. Okay.
Okay, I gotcha.
To keep an eye on it. All right, guys. Bye. Keep it up.
Bye.
Keep it up.
Bye, you
Bye.
guys. Love you.
Bye.
God
You
bless
too,
you.
Kim.
Bye bye.